If Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin got stuck on the moon, the official policy was to cut off communication and let them slowly suffocate in silence. President Nixon even had a speech prepared in case this happened. The speech read, quote, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace." Actor Bela Lugosi famously played Count Dracula in the 1931 film. As per his request, he was dressed in vampire clothing during his open casket funeral in 1956. Chad Verra was a priest who started the very first suicide hotline in 1953. He decided to start it after directing a funeral for a girl who took her own life when she had her first period. She believed she had contracted an STD and had no one to talk to reassure her. In 2008, 23-year-old Rachel Hoffman was arrested for possession of marijuana and was facing 4 years in prison. Police told her that the only way to get out of the prison time was to become a confidential informant. She agreed, and her first undercover drug purchase would have been one of the biggest in Florida history. Police told her to buy 1,500 pills as well as a gun from some drug dealers. But the dealers found a wire in her purse and she was murdered with the gun that she was buying. Before World War II, Janusz Korczak ran an orphanage in Warsaw, Poland. During the Holocaust, Nazi soldiers came to his orphanage to take all 192 children to an extermination camp. Korczak was offered his freedom but refused to abandon the children. Instead, he boarded the train with them and was never seen nor heard from again. The owner of Macy's died on the Titanic. He refused to board a lifeboat before women and children, and his wife refused to leave without him. They were last seen holding hands on the deck and were portrayed as the old couple in the movie who were laying down as the ship sank. The first movie about the sinking of the Titanic was released only 29 days after the tragedy. The lead actress was an actual survivor and suffered a severe mental breakdown after filming. A businessman from Uruguay survived the fire and sinking of a ship in 1871, leaving him emotionally scarred. 41 years later, he finally got over his fears and decided to sail again, only to die in the sinking of that new ship, the Titanic. The Titanic is being corroded by a unique form of bacteria that eats rusted iron. Scientists say it may only have another 12 years before it's gone forever. Scientists who first discovered the platypus thought it was fake. They assumed that an egg-laying, duck-billed, venomous mammal with the tail of a beaver had to be an elaborate hoax. Standing at 380 feet tall, Hyperion is the largest known living tree in the world. Located somewhere in California, its exact location is kept a secret to protect it from vandals. A Japanese zoo once tried to mate a pair of hyenas for 4 years before realizing that they were both males. This resilient tree had all of its soil washed away but still refused to die. These are some examples of animals that are bilateral gynandromorphs. It's a genetic mutation that causes one of their first cells to be male and the other to be female. The result is an extraordinary animal that's male on one side and female on the other. After filming Psycho, actress Janet Leigh was so terrified of showers that she only took baths for 35 straight years. On the extremely rare occasion that she did take a shower, she made sure that every door in the house was locked and left the shower curtain open. An Indian actor named Shyam risked his life to transform for a role. He went 9 straight days without sleep so that the tissues under his eyes would swell up. Robert De Niro's character famously played Russian roulette in the movie Deer Hunter. When filming the scene, De Niro suggested using a real bullet to raise the tension of the actors. The actor who played the xenomorphin alien was a 6'10" man from Nigeria. He was discovered by the casting team in a local pub, and it was the only time he appeared in a movie. Archaeologists in New Mexico have found the longest prehistoric human trail ever discovered. It's more than a mile long in an area that was full of predators during the Ice Age. The footprints belong to a young adult and a toddler, likely a mother and her child. She was in a hurry and sometimes carried the child on her back. This 9,000-year-old cave painting was discovered in Tassili Cave in Algeria. It is a depiction of a shaman during a psychedelic mushroom trip. Some things just never change. This 1,800-year-old carving of a pecker was found near Hadrian's Wall in England. In 1992, a man from Great Britain was using a metal detector to find a lost hammer on his farm, but instead he stumbled upon one of the largest collections of ancient Roman coins in the world. The 1,500-year-old treasure consisted of nearly 15,000 coins. In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosive charges. However, the ball never made it to the battlefield since the explosives gave it an unpredictable flight. According to the Geneva Conventions, if you play dead to kill an enemy during a war scenario, then you are committing a war crime. During World War II, it was common for soldiers to keep photos of their loved ones under transparent grips on their pistols. They were known as sweetheart grips. When Soviet forces were pushing toward Berlin during World War II, a Nazi SS soldier was forced to play piano for his captors. They made it clear to him in sign language that he would be executed the minute he stopped playing. So he played for 22 straight hours, after which he collapsed in tears. They congratulated him, then shot him. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was shot in West Germany in 1970. But producers had a hard time finding little people to cast as Oompa Loompas since so many of them had been killed off during the Holocaust. Many survivors were too weak to digest food even after they were rescued. As a result, about half the survivors from Auschwitz died within days of being liberated. Just one day before the Germans surrendered, Allied forces mistook SS Cap Arcona as a Nazi warship and sank it. But the ship had been carrying 7,000 men, women, and children who were concentration camp survivors. There was a famous Jewish boxer named Salomo Aruch who was imprisoned at Auschwitz. He was forced to fight fellow prisoners and the loser was sent to the gas chambers. He survived more than 200 fights over a 2-year span until the camp was liberated. One of the original 5 Japanese cities that the US planned on nuking was its former capital, Kyoto. The only reason it wasn't bombed was because US Secretary of War Henry Stimson spent his honeymoon there and called it a nice place. So instead of Kyoto, they chose Nagasaki. Roman Emperor Caligula once declared war on Neptune, god of the seas. His men ran at the ocean and stabbed the water for a short time before surrendering. World War II ace pilot Douglas Bader flew with no legs. This became a surprising advantage against G-force, making him less likely to pass out. A quiet American prisoner of war was nicknamed the Incredibly Stupid One by Vietnamese captors. But upon his return to the US, he provided the names of 200 other prisoners of war, which he had memorized to the tune of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Archaeologists have discovered dwarf crocodiles living in remote caves in the African country of Gabon. After living in complete darkness, their skin has turned orange and they are nearly blind. These weird cave crocodiles may be in the process of evolving into an entirely new species. In the town of Churchill, Manitoba, it is deemed common courtesy to keep your car doors unlocked. This is so that townspeople can have a quick escape if they ever come across a wild polar bear. In 2007, a giant bowhead whale was caught off the coast of Alaska with an old harpoon point embedded in its neck. Further examination revealed that the fragment dated back to the year 1880, indicating that the whale had survived a human attack that took place over a century ago. This also proved to scientists that bowhead whales are the longest living mammals in the world. Astronomer Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto in 1930 and investigated it throughout his whole life. He died in 1997 at the age of 90, less than a decade before the New Horizons launch to Pluto. His ashes were launched on the spacecraft to honor his final wish, and he was able to visit the planet that he discovered. The last time all humans were on Earth together was on November 2nd in the year 2000. At least one person has been on the International Space Station ever since. This photo taken from 1,000,000 miles away shows an extremely rare view of the far side of the moon. Since the launch of Sputnik in 1957, humans have littered the space around us with thousands of satellites. In the future, this may make it dangerous to leave the planet, and we may become forever trapped in our own garbage. Before the invention of ultrasound, parents often had no idea what they were getting. Accordingly, this photo from 1946 shows a man passing out with excitement after finding out that his wife just had triplets. These are what the marble steps look like in the Leaning Tower of Pisa after 500 years of people walking on them. A lot of old movie theaters had cry rooms where you could bring your children to if they were becoming too disruptive. This way you could still enjoy the movie without disrupting other moviegoers. In 1913, a 12-year-old black girl named Sarah Rector was given land unsuitable for farming. But it turned out to be rich with oil and she became a millionaire overnight. She was known as the richest colored girl in the world, and Oklahoma legislation made an effort to have her legally declared white. In 1985, a black bear was found dead due to a cocaine overdose in a forest in Georgia. The bear had eaten 76 pounds of cocaine out of a duffel bag that fell from the plane of a drug smuggler. Shortly before dying, he was probably the most dangerous apex predator on the planet. This photo of a kidney stone under an electron microscope shows you why they're so painful. Bruce Lee's son Brandon was accidentally killed on the set of The Crow when he was only 28 years old. A prop gun was loaded improperly, causing dummy bullets to fire at him with the same force as live ammunition. In 2014, Harvard University discovered that 2 books in their library were bound using human skin. One of the books is called Destinies of the Soul. In the book, the author wrote a note that said, "A book about the human soul deserved to have a human covering." These are some of the weirdest births ever recorded. Yep, that's a pregnant baby. This extremely rare condition is known as fetus in fetu and happens when a baby's body absorbs the embryo of its twin. In 1935, a pregnant Alton Jordan fell 40 feet into a well and gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Frank. The infant remained underwater for 45 minutes without breathing until both were rescued. In 2016, a baby girl named Lindley was born twice. A Nigerian surgeon removed her from the womb to cut a tumor on her spine. He then put her back, and 12 weeks later, Lindley was born healthy. In 1939, 5-year-old Lena Medina became the youngest confirmed person to ever give birth. Her son was born by C-section and was raised as her brother. Medina is still alive today, but has never revealed the father nor the circumstances of her impregnation. These giant stick insects known as tree lobsters were thought to be wiped out by rats in 1920. But in 2001, 24 of them were found in a small bush on an island called Ball's Pyramid. No one knows how they got there, but they were the last known survivors of the species until scientists started breeding them. 44 years ago today was the first and only time that snow was recorded in Miami, Florida. Sea urchins sometimes cover themselves with rocks for protection, so if you give them tiny hats, they'll wear them. In the 1930s, a flute player had a pet lyrebird that mimicked his music. Eventually, he released the bird into the wild. But fragments of the flute player's music were passed down by generations of lyrebirds and are still present in their songs today. A pig named Lulu saved her owner's life while the woman was having a heart attack. The pig heard the cries of pain, ran outside into the road, and played dead to stop the traffic. One driver stopped, the pig led him to the trailer, and he called 911 after hearing the woman screaming. This is a photo of 2 surgeons after removing a set of brain tumors during a 32-hour surgery. In 2001, an abused lion cub, tiger cub, and bear cub were all found in a drug dealer's basement. They were all moved to Noah's Ark Sanctuary in Georgia and became inseparable friends for life. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. These photos show what 4 years of fighting in World War II did to the face of a young Soviet man. As the museum caption reads, "The first face looks at you, the second face looks through you." During World War I, a carrier pigeon named Cher Ami was shot, blinded, and had her leg blown off. But she was still able to deliver an important message and save the lives of nearly 200 men. About 2,000 tons of unexploded bombs are still found in Germany each year. In the Vietnam War, American sniper Carlos Hathcock was a legend in the U.S. Marine Corps with his 93 confirmed kills. During one instance, he volunteered to crawl for 3 days across 2,000 meters of open field containing an enemy headquarters. He took a single shot that killed a North Vietnamese general and crawled back out without being spotted. Here are some morbid facts that you didn't know about the bombing of Hiroshima. Many people who witnessed the nuclear blast firsthand were blinded instantly. Some were even left with permanent atomic bomb cataracts like this one. When the bomb was dropped, the blast was so powerful that it permanently burned the shadows of objects and people into the ground. Some Hiroshima survivors eventually grew black fingernails like this one. These fingernails contained active blood vessels and bled profusively when they broke off. If you're a certain distance from a nuclear explosion, you won't die immediately. Instead, you'll get third-degree burns all over your body and your nerves will be killed so fast that you'll barely even feel it. This happened to a lot of people in Hiroshima, and when rescuers would grab their arms to help them, their skin would slide off just like a glove. Here are the crazy origins behind some ancient urban legends. This is a snapping turtle buried in mud after coming out of hibernation. It's where the Native American legend of the earth being brought into existence and carried on the shell of a giant turtle came from. This is the skull of an elephant. In ancient Greece, the nasal cavity in the cranium was mistaken for an eye hole, and thus the legend of the Cyclops was born. Similarly, it's believed that dragons originated from ancient peoples discovering fossils of dinosaurs. This illusion is an example of a fata morgana. It's a mirage that causes the object to appear distorted due to bending rays of light. It can happen to nearly any large distant object, including boats, buildings, and islands. It's also believed that this illusion created the myth of the Flying Dutchman. There's a tribe in India that has learned how to train the roots of fig trees to create natural suspension bridges. These bridges can span over 100 feet and last up to 600 years. After colliding with a propeller, this loggerhead sea turtle received a 3D printed titanium jaw. The lobster has changed very little over the last 100 million years and is known for its unusual anatomy. Its brain is located in its throat, its teeth are in its stomach, and its kidneys are in its head. It also hears using its legs and tastes with its feet. The red-crested tree rat is a species of rodent that was thought to be extinct for over 100 years. But in 2011, one appeared outside of an eco lodge in Colombia and let researchers photograph it for 2 hours. It then disappeared into the night, never to be seen again. After donating blood for the first time, a 21-year-old Canadian woman has lost the ability to move her right arm. The nurse accidentally drew blood from an artery instead of a vein, causing damage that was permanent. During his reign, Genghis Khan killed so many people that it was actually good for the environment. The 40 million or so deaths he was responsible for dropped the Earth's carbon levels by an estimated 700 million tons. Morgan Freeman says he always wears his earrings because they're worth just enough to pay for a coffin if he happened to die in a strange place. Back in the 1500s, doctors thought that cutting open infants' gums would encourage their teeth to grow. Unfortunately, many of these children ended up dying due to severe mouth infections. In 2014, an 11-year-old boy was in the passenger seat when his 79-year-old grandfather collapsed at the wheel. Using skills he picked up from playing Grand Theft Auto, the boy managed to grab the wheel and steer the car to safety until help arrived. After the loss of their newborn daughter, Nathan Steffel and his wife were devastated that they never got to see her without tubes. So Nathan went to Reddit to see if anyone would be willing to Photoshop this image. His request was quickly flooded with drawings, paintings, and support from thousands of Redditors. In 2014, 3-year-old Marina Chikatova survived in the Siberian wilderness for 11 days with no one other than her dog for company. She ate wild berries, drank from a river, and curled up with her dog for warmth. She was saved when her dog managed to find her village and guide rescuers toward her. In 2015, a woman from Florida was being held hostage by her boyfriend, but luckily she convinced him to let her order a pizza using the Pizza Hut app. In the space for special requests, she wrote, "Please help, get 911 to me." Police soon arrived at the location and the abusive boyfriend was arrested. When he was 17 years old, Ozzy Osbourne was arrested for stealing women's underwear. But his father refused to pay the fine and Ozzy spent 6 weeks in jail. He later called it one of the best lessons of his life. Two thieves once broke into a man's home in England and stole his laptop. But in his files, they found some serious child abuse material and brought the laptop to police. The pedophile got 3 years in jail and the burglars served 12 months of community service. During his time with the Air Force, the famous Johnny Cash worked as a Morse code operator. This led to him intercepting and reporting on the news from the Soviet Union that Joseph Stalin had died. In fact, Johnny Cash might have been the first American to hear of Stalin's passing. During World War I, the life of a 17-year-old British soldier was saved when his pocket Bible stopped a bullet. The book has been passed down through his family and still has the bullet inside, about 50 pages from the end. During World War II, there was a Nazi interrogator named Hans Scharf who never tortured his prisoners to get information. Instead, he told them jokes, brought them homemade food, and took them on nature walks. His techniques were very successful as he was known as the master interrogator of Nazi Germany. Here are some morbid facts that you didn't know about 9/11. In 1983, professional climber Dan Goodwin illegally climbed the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He said he was trying to call attention to the inability to rescue trapped occupants of the upper levels of skyscrapers. Out of the 343 firefighters that perished on 9/11, Daniel Sir was the first. He died when a woman who jumped from one of the towers landed on him. Only one non-military plane was allowed to fly after all commercial flights were forced to land. It was delivering antivenom to a snake handler in Florida who was bitten by the extremely venomous taipan snake. The only off-duty NYPD officer who was killed in 9/11 had signed his retirement papers that morning. But instead of leaving his badge, John William Perry decided to pick it up one last time. For a group of kids in London, England, a day of hunting for Easter eggs quickly turned into a thrilling hunt for burglars. A break-in at a nearby building brought a dramatic police helicopter chase right to them. With a chopper overhead and two men suddenly running through the field, the children soon realized they were witnessing a police pursuit. So they dropped to the ground and laid in an arrow formation to direct authorities in the right direction. Woody Harrelson's father, Charles, was a professional hitman who once assassinated a federal judge. In 1983, a man confessed to the murder of his wife after a female skull was found in a peat bog near his home. He was convicted of her 1961 murder based on this confession. But it turned out that the skull actually belonged to a woman who had died nearly 1,800 years earlier. The man was convicted anyway. 8,500 feet up the slope of Mount Everest, a creepy marker serves as a guide for climbers. Known as the Green Boots, everyone approaching the summit from the north side must pass by Suang Paljor's body. It's seen as a milestone because it's an indication of just how close one is to the top of the mountain. A 17-year-old boy from Mexico City died after his girlfriend gave him a hickey. The suction resulted in a blood clot that traveled to the brain, eventually causing a stroke. In 2003, David and Tina Watson were scuba diving on their honeymoon in the Great Barrier Reef. When currents became too rough, David, an experienced diver, swam to the surface while his wife struggled in panic. This photo captures Tina lying helplessly on the sea floor in her final moments before drowning. The blue American rabbit was developed in 1917 by Louis H. Salisbury. Although it's natural, he never revealed what breeds he used to create this variety. In 1998, Honduras built a bridge over the Choluteca River, but the water was rerouted by Hurricane Mitch that same year. This mutated octopus with 85 tentacles was captured on an island near Japan. Known for its protrusible jaw and nail-like teeth, the goblin shark has only been seen about 50 times since its discovery in 1897. In 1493, Christopher Columbus mistook manatees for mermaids and wrote, "They're not so beautiful as they're said to be, since their faces have some masculine traits." In 1961, the son of U.S. Vice President Nelson Rockefeller went missing during an expedition in Papua New Guinea. Although he was declared legally dead in 1964 since his body was never recovered, Some say this is him as part of a cannibalistic tribe in 1969. Up until 1974, it was illegal to appear in public in the city of Chicago if you were ugly. Each offense was subject to a $1 fine, which would be $20 today. Years before the introduction of colored photographs, a chemist and photographer from Russia created the most basic version of one. He combined 3 regular black and white photos, each through a filter of red, green, and blue. He then merged them to create a beautiful image with color. This image taken by him is over 100 years old. This is a photo of a rubber worker in the Belgian Congo staring at the severed hands and feet of his 5-year-old daughter. She was murdered because he failed to meet his quota for the day. Today, the photo serves as a stark reminder of the brutality that came with colonialism. If we held a minute of silence for every victim of the Holocaust, we would be silent for 11.5 years. This is a photo of 2 autistic boys strapped to a radiator in a mental hospital in 1982. While filming the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, photographer Robert Landsberg realized he had no chance of surviving it. So he wound the film back, put his camera in his backpack, and laid on top of it to protect the film for future researchers. The train crash in The Fugitive was extremely dangerous and expensive to shoot because they crashed an actual train into an actual bus at full speed. Harrison Ford tore his ACL while filming the scene, and his limp throughout the rest of the movie was real. And the wreckage of the train is still sitting in the woods of North Carolina today. Stephen King famously hated the film version of The Shining, but when he saw Shawshank Redemption, he called it not just one of the best movies done for my work, but a potential movie classic. Danny DeVito not only starred in the movie Matilda, but also directed it. He also took care of the actress who played Matilda while her mother was in the hospital with cancer. He even got an advanced copy of the film for her mother to watch before she succumbed to her illness. A teen boy injected himself with mercury at least 3 times while attempting to convert his bones into metal after watching X-Men Origins Wolverine. He was also intentionally bitten by spiders multiple times so that he could become Spider-Man. This endangered baby dolphin died shortly after this photo was taken because swimmers were passing it around for selfies. A man once threw a mouse into a pile of burning leaves. The mouse then ran into the man's home while still on fire and burned the entire house down. When people are electrocuted and thrown far distances, it is the result of sudden violent muscle contractions, not the shock itself. This has raised questions about the actual strength and subconscious capabilities of the muscles of the human body. A flight attendant named Sheila Frederick noticed a terrified girl who was accompanied by an older man on a flight. Sheila discreetly told the girl to go to the bathroom, where she left a note asking if she was okay. The girl went to the bathroom and wrote, "I need help" on the note. The police were waiting when the plane landed, and the girl was saved from a human trafficker. This is a photo of a police canine being saluted by officers before entering the vet to be put down. This mother horse lost her baby while in labor. 2 days later, she was given a foal who had lost her mother, and this was the photo taken after they were introduced. A 67-year-old named Dorothy Fletcher once had a heart attack while on a flight. When a stewardess asked if there was a doctor on the flight, 15 people stood up. They happened to be on their way to a cardiology conference and the woman was saved. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill held 42 Nazi soldiers hostage while wielding a sword during a 1942 raid in occupied Norway. Nicknamed Mad Jack, he also had the only confirmed kill of a Nazi while using a longbow. During World War II, Dr. Eugene Lazowski saved the lives of over 8,000 Jews in the town of Rosvedov. He managed to fake a typhus epidemic that prevented the Nazis from entering the town. Several indigenous tribes on Pacific Islands thought that cargo dropped for U.S. soldiers during World War II were gifts from the gods. Once American soldiers left, many of these islanders built ceremonial planes and airstrips so that God would drop them more cargo. They're known as cargo cults, and many of them are still active today. When Ben Franklin's London home was renovated in 1998, 15 human bodies, including 6 children, were discovered in the basement. Archaeologists agree that they were buried at the same time Franklin had been living in the home. While police initially thought it was the work of a serial killer, the bodies were likely stolen by his friend William Hewson so that he could study anatomy. When Joseph Stalin was dying, his private physician was not available. This is because he was already being tortured in the KGB headquarters for suggesting that Stalin get more bed rest. A Thai woman once accidentally slipped on mud, grabbed a naked live wire, and was electrocuted to death. After the funeral, her sister was showing her neighbors how the accident happened. Suddenly, she herself slipped, grabbed the same live wire, and was also electrocuted to death. Here are some disturbing facts that you probably didn't know about the Titanic. The day after the Titanic sank, various newspapers reported that the ship hit an iceberg, but no lives were lost. It wasn't long before they realized what terrible mistakes they had made. Just like in the movie, a group of musicians actually did continue playing as the ship went down. They could have chosen to board a lifeboat, but instead decided to calm the other passengers with their music. The chief baker on the ship, Charles Joffin, survived in the icy waters for 2 hours before he was rescued. He claimed he didn't feel cold because of all the whiskey he drank that night. 16-year-old survivor Catherine Gilnag didn't realize that it was a serious situation until she reached New York. She thought that disembarking in lifeboats and being picked up by another ship was all just part of the journey. This is a photo of Otto Warmbier begging for mercy while on trial for stealing a propaganda poster in North Korea. He returned to the US with irreversible brain damage and died 6 years later. This is the crevice where Aaron Ralston cut off his own arm to free himself after being trapped by a massive boulder. He did it using nothing but a dull pocket knife, and the movie 127 Hours is based on his triumph. During a 1998 soccer match in the Republic of Congo, a lightning bolt struck one of the goal pitches. It killed all 11 members of the home team, who were all wearing metal spikes. The other team was left completely unscathed, for they had all been wearing rubber cleats. Hidden behind Mount Rushmore is a secret vault that holds important information about the United States and its history. The room is not accessible to the public, but is otherwise left as a record for people thousands of years from now who may wonder how and why Mount Rushmore was carved. Many believe that the vault stores classified documents on suspicious topics such as Area 51. This is a photo from 1955 of a woman being ticketed for wearing a bikini on a public beach in Italy. Dated to 1504, this carved ostrich egg is the oldest known depiction of the New World. The globe shows North America as an unnamed group of scattered islands. There are also depictions of ships, monsters, and 71 named places. It even contains the sentence Hic sunt dracones, which translates to Here lies dragons. Villagers along the Niger River were losing cows and people at such an alarming rate that they had to call in the National Army. The culprit ended up being a 22-foot-long, 2,500-pound monster crocodile. If you were to swim near a pod of narwhals and happen to hear one whistle, it might be the last thing that you ever heard. The sounds that narwhals make are so loud that they're said to be deafening to humans. These are what the muscles look like on a fully grown male Siberian tiger. These are what the vestigial limbs of a beluga whale look like. When sailors first explored the Arctic waters, they understandably mistook beluga whales for real-life mermaids. The great patoo is an incredibly rare tree-dwelling bird from tropical America. The bird is known for its creepy nocturnal cries as well as the fact that it looks like an alien. Dolphins love interacting with pregnant women because they communicate using ultrasound. Not only can they hear the mother's heartbeat, but also the baby's, and they find this very fascinating. For more than 20 years, a dolphin named Pelorus Jack regularly guided ships through treacherous waters until his disappearance in 1912. A man from Argentina posted this photo of a giant mosquito called a gallinipper that his mother killed in her home. While its bite can be very painful, it's not nearly as dangerous as the smaller mosquito, which can transmit yellow fever and Zika virus. Naka Cave in Thailand closely resembles a giant petrified snake. The average silverback gorilla is 4 to 9 times stronger than the average human male. They can deadlift 1,800 pounds and their grip can crush the skull of a crocodile. This is a photo of doctors bowing to an 11-year-old boy who died from an aneurysm. They are bowing because by donating his organs, the boy saved the lives of 4 other children. California officer Kevin Briggs has stopped more than 200 people from committing suicide on the Golden Gate Bridge. He is nicknamed the Guardian of the Golden Gate. This is a Vietnam War veteran fulfilling a promise to an old friend, keeping watch one last time. There's a biker group from Arizona who help keep victims of child abuse safe from their abusers while they're being prosecuted. The bikers guard the child's home at night if the abuser's not yet in jail. They also go to court with the child and shield them so that they don't have to look at their abuser. Here are some wild facts that I bet you didn't learn in history class. The first known photograph of a person was taken in 1838. It only happened because a man and his shoe shiner were the only people still enough on a busy street to show up in the 10-minute exposure. In 1937, two women wore shorts out in public for the first time. They drew a massive amount of male attention and even caused a car accident. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building in the world for nearly 4,000 years until the Lincoln Cathedral was built in 1311. When trains were first introduced in the US, women were afraid to ride in them. This is because many people believed that women's bodies were not designed to go 50 miles an hour, and that their uteruses would fly out of their bodies if they were accelerated to that speed. Masabumi Hosono was the only Japanese passenger on the Titanic, and he managed to survive the sinking. But after returning to his home country, he was publicly condemned and lost his job for not going down with the other passengers. President JFK's brain has been missing from the National Archives for more than 50 years. Stanley Meyer was one of the first to invent a car that was completely powered by water. He claimed that it was capable of traveling across the country on just 72 liters of tap water, which would have revolutionized the auto industry and made gasoline obsolete. But shortly after creating the car, Stanley died while meeting with investors. His brother said he ran out of the restaurant choking, looked at him and said, "They've poisoned me." Whiskey distiller Jack Daniel died after kicking his safe because he forgot his combination. He injured his big toe and it got infected, so he had to have his foot amputated. But the infection spread to the rest of his system and he died from complications. On 9/11, there was only one American in space. And this is the photo he took from the International Space Station. The first person to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge was a professional high diver. He wanted to demonstrate that people don't die simply from falling through the air, and he was correct. He fell 135 feet through the air without a problem, but hitting the water killed him immediately. In 2008, police in Finland found a dead mosquito inside of a stolen car. So they tested the blood from the mosquito's last meal and used it to successfully identify the thief. In 1979, 16-year-old Brenda Spencer shot and killed the principal and a custodian at her school while injuring 9 others, including a policeman. When asked what her motive was for the shooting, she replied, "I don't like Mondays." This is a photo from 1999 of a divorcing couple splitting their Beanie Babies in front of a judge in court. Serial killer Edmund Kemper became friends with the very police officers that were investigating his murders. They called him Big Ed at the local bar and never would have suspected him in 1,000 years. When he initially confessed, they laughed at him because they thought he was pulling a prank. Alfred Nobel was known for his 300-plus patents, including dynamite. When Alfred's brother died in 1888, a local newspaper confused him with Alfred and wrote his obituary. It condemned Alfred for his invention of explosives and portrayed him as a horrible person. Alfred, still being alive, decided to leave a better legacy for himself. So in 1895, he set aside the bulk of his estate to establish the Nobel Prize. Knowing he couldn't swim, running back Joe Delaney died while attempting to save 3 children from drowning in 1983. In 1995, a Russian dog survived a car crash that his owners died in. Despite attempts to adopt him, the dog refused to leave the site of the accident. Rain or shine, he waited for them every day until dying 7 years later. The city informally adopted the dog and dedicated a statue to it called Loyalty. Pablo Picasso used to carry around a revolver loaded with blanks. And when people asked him about the meaning of his paintings, he would pretend to shoot them in the face. In 2012, 66-year-old Stevie Crecelius went to the hospital thinking he had a kidney stone. During that visit, he would find out that he actually had a strange condition and had been a woman his whole life. Nicolas Cage has already bought his grave, and it's a 9-foot-tall pyramid in Louisiana. In 1976, Princeton undergraduate John Aristotle Phillips wrote his thesis on how to build an atomic bomb. He ended up getting an A on the paper, but never got it back because it was seized by the FBI. During World War II, the London Zoo had to kill all of its venomous animals in case the zoo was bombed and the animals escaped. During that same war, Juliana the Great Dane was awarded the Blue Cross Medal after putting out a bomb by peeing on it. In 2008, a British Marine named Matthew Croucher flung himself back first onto a grenade to save his comrades. Though the explosion threw him into the air, the blast was absorbed by his rucksack. He was prepared to die but managed to walk away with nothing but a nosebleed and a headache. This photo is the definition of fear. An LA woman was evading a home intruder by hiding on her roof, and she managed to grab her phone and dial 911. She said that her greatest fear was that he would try to hide where she was hiding. Juan Catalan was put on death row and spent nearly 6 months in prison for the murder of a teenage girl. He was the prime suspect only until his lawyer came across some unused footage from Curb Your Enthusiasm. The footage proved that Catalan had been at a Dodgers game with his daughter at the time of the murder. Joe Arity was a mentally disabled 23-year-old man who was falsely executed for the rape and murder of a teenage girl in 1939. Joe was known as the happiest man on death row, for he likely didn't even know that he was being put to death. For his last meal, he requested ice cream and even saved some for after the execution. In 1969, an astrologer warned John Lennon that he would be shot on an island. John was so disturbed by this that it caused him to cancel an upcoming yacht trip around the Greek islands. 11 years later, John Lennon would be shot and killed on the island of Manhattan. The day after Robin Williams died, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline received the highest number of calls in its history. It is estimated that there are still approximately 40 million slaves in the world today. About 70% of them are women, while 25% of them are children. The Bunker brothers were a pair of conjoined twins who made the term Siamese twins popular. They were a famous sideshow act in North Carolina until one day one of the brothers woke up to find that his twin had died. In a panic, he called for a doctor to perform an emergency separation, but it was already too late. He would die just 3 hours after his brother. On 9/11, a guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She only stopped briefly at one point to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. These two human skeletons were discovered in a bin during an excavation in Iran dating back to 800 BC. They died in what appears to be a loving embrace and have remained that way for 2,800 years. Researchers claim that both skeletons were males based on dental evidence. In 1907, a Mexican railroad worker named Jesus Garcia jumped onto a train loaded with dynamite after realizing that the train was on fire. Knowing that an explosion was inevitable, he reversed the train at full steam for 4 miles until he was clear of the town. Moments afterward, the dynamite exploded, killing Jesus but sparing the town. You can literally die from pooping too hard, and it's actually pretty common. Nearly all cases involve people with bad hearts who just pushed a little too hard. One of the most notable people who died this way is Elvis Presley. Up until the 1950s, cigarettes were used to treat people with asthma along with other pulmonary conditions. 30 years ago, you had about 17 minutes to escape a house fire. Today, that's down to about 3 to 4 minutes due to many of the highly flammable synthetic materials used in furniture. After a mass shooting, you would expect complete silence at the scene of the crime. But police say one of the eeriest things is all of the phones that ring when family members are trying to find out if their loved ones are okay. As horrible as the Holocaust was, one man truly stood out as one of the most evil of all Nazis involved. Dr. Joseph Mengele was tasked with conducting genetic research on human subjects at Auschwitz concentration camp. His work focused primarily on twins, with very little regard for the safety or suffering of his patients. Some of his horrific experiments included removing organs without anesthesia, injecting toxic dye into eyeballs, and even sewing twins together at the skin. Most of his patients ended up dying after these operations, but those who didn't often wish they had. What's perhaps most disturbing is that after the Holocaust, Dr. Mengele escaped to South America, where many say he continued his brutal experiments in a less organized manner. He lived for more than 30 years after the end of the war and died on a beach in Brazil. Stepan the brown bear was found weak and alone in the woods when he was just 3 months old. But a Russian couple nursed him back to health, and now 25 years later, he still lives with them in their Moscow home. The couple says the 7-foot-tall bear loves people and has never shown signs of aggression. Temperatures get so cold in the winters in Finland that the frost and snow on the trees can make the landscape look like another planet. Both tanks in this photo are filled with water from the same source, but the tank on the right has oysters in it. A single adult oyster can filter as much as 50 gallons of water per day. Researchers have found that cockroach milk can be 4 times as nutritious as cow's milk. They claim that it's a superfood that can act as a fantastic supplement for protein. Scientists believe that it can help in feeding our growing population in the future. This photo was taken on the morning of April 15th, 1912, just a few miles south of where the Titanic went down. The steward who took the photo had not yet heard about the sinking of the Titanic. What caught his attention was the smear of red paint across the base of the iceberg, indicating that it had collided with a ship. Little did he know there were about 1,500 dead bodies in the depths below him. In 1962, a Cuban boxer named Benny Perret made fun of his opponent Emil Griffith for being a homosexual. Griffith ended up beating Perret so badly that he fell into a coma and died 10 days after the fight. In 2007, a woman woke up in the middle of a surgery where doctors were removing one of her eyes. She was aware of everything going on for hours but couldn't tell the doctors to stop. She says the experience was so horrific that she thought she had died and gone to hell. Back in 1922, children suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis were kept in large wards. Grieving family members would visit their comatose children and sit by their beds, waiting for their inevitable deaths. But one day, 3 scientists walked into one of these wards and began injecting the children with a new purified extract called insulin. Before they had reached the last comatose patient, the first few that they injected started waking up, and a room of death turned into a place of joy. After surviving a fire, Taka the Shiba Inu is now a therapy dog for burn victims. In 2010, 7-year-old Stella Bernston drowned in some icy water in Sweden. Her body was found 4 hours later by a rescue helicopter and she was taken to the nearest hospital. Despite her body being only 13 degrees Celsius, doctors managed to save Stella by slowly warming. In 1935, North Carolina, a pregnant Elton Jordan fell into a well and gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Frank. The infant remained underwater for 45 minutes without breathing until both were safely rescued. A Pakistani serial killer was sentenced to be strangled in front of the victims' families, dismembered in 100 pieces, and then burned in acid. The same way he killed over 100 teenage boys. Olympic runner Betty Robinson was involved in a plane crash in 1931 and was wrongfully declared dead upon first being discovered. She spent 7 months in a coma, and it took her 2 years to learn how to walk again. But in 1936, she rejoined the U.S. Olympic relay team and took home the gold medal. In 1964, the FBI sent Martin Luther King Jr. an anonymous letter along with a cassette tape. The letter claimed that the cassette had recorded evidence of King committing illegal acts towards women. The letter also clearly implied that suicide would be the most suitable course of action for Dr. King. During World War II, Allied forces accidentally sunk a ship carrying concentration camp survivors, killing about 5,000 of them. After learning that her husband was unable to have kids, a woman from Prague contemplated both murder and suicide. She eventually decided on suicide and jumped from her 3rd-story balcony. However, she landed on her husband, who just so happened to be standing in the street below her. He died, but since he cushioned her fall, she survived. Floyd and Violet Hartwig were married for 67 years and died while holding hands. They met in elementary school and exchanged over 100 love letters while Floyd served in World War II. In 2015, their hospice beds were pushed together so that they could spend their final moments holding hands. When Floyd passed away, Violet followed him just 5 hours later. A grieving father had this tombstone designed for his wheelchair-bound son to depict him as free from his earthly burdens. In 1959, police were called into a segregated library in South Carolina because a 9-year-old black boy refused to leave. He later got a PhD in physics from MIT but died in 1986 as one of the astronauts on the Challenger. And the library that once refused to lend him books is now named after him. Steve Jobs could have avoided a premature death from cancer by having it properly treated. Instead, he refused surgery for 9 months and favored dietary treatments and other alternatives. Shortly before he died, he claimed that it was one of his biggest life regrets. With a 9% fatality rate, being the president is by far the most dangerous job in America. Hours before his death, Edgar Allan Poe was acting delirious in the streets of Baltimore. He was wearing another man's clothing and was unable to explain how he got there. While many ideas have been put forth, his cause of death remains a mystery to this day. In 2012, a Texas father beat his 5-year-old daughter's molester to death. But a grand jury declined to indict the man because they decided that he was justified in using deadly force to protect his daughter. A man who suffered a stroke in 2004 permanently lost the ability to feel sad. A Greek war veteran was once diagnosed with cancer in his mid-60s and was only given 9 months to live. But he went back to those same doctors 25 years later to tell them that he was alive and well. But he soon found out that all of the doctors who diagnosed him were now dead. The man ended up living to the age of 102. The arm of Civil War General Thomas Stonewall Jackson has its own grave. In 1863, his arm had to be amputated after he was accidentally shot by his own Confederate troops. But he was so famous that no one could bear to throw the arm into the pile of discarded limbs. So instead, it was given its own burial. M&Ms were invented in 1941 so that American soldiers could enjoy chocolate that was heat-resistant and easy to transport during World War II. Initially, they were sold exclusively to the US military. During World War II, a Dutch minesweeper evaded the Japanese for 8 days disguised as an island. The crew covered the decks in trees and painted exposed surfaces to look like rocks. They moved only at night and anchored close to the shore during the day, eventually escaping to Australia. In 2016, a Somalian suicide bomber brought explosives onto a commercial flight with the intent of blowing up the plane. 20 minutes after takeoff, the explosives detonated and blasted a hole in the side of the plane. The bomber was instantly sucked out and ended up being the only fatality. In 1832, a man named John Rennie personally designed and carved his own headstone before dying. It's an acrostic puzzle that reads, "Here lies John Rennie, 46,000 different ways." In 1993, a Canadian lawyer named Gary Hoy claimed to a group of students that the windows in his building were unbreakable. To prove this, he threw himself at the window at full force. While the glass didn't break, the frame popped out, and Gary fell 24 stories down to his death. This is a photo of Anne Frank's father Otto revisiting the attic where they hid from the Nazis. Sadly, he was the only surviving member of the family as his 2 daughters died just weeks before their camp was liberated. In 1783, a boy was born with 2 heads, but one of the heads was upside down. Surprisingly, the other head was somewhat functional, and the boy even claimed that he could hear the other brain talking to him. Tigers are some of the most vengeful animals on the planet and will take revenge on anyone who has wronged them. In 1997, a Russian poacher shot a tiger and left him for dead before stealing part of his meal. The tiger later found the poacher's cabin and waited 12 hours for him to arrive before killing and eating him. If you're ever feeling down in life, just remember you're not this guy. This Brazilian prisoner spent 5 years digging an escape tunnel only to realize he was too fat to fit out the other end. His only choice was to give up on his master plan and call for help. When China used to carry out executions with a bullet to the back of the head, the family of the condemned would be sent an invoice for the cost of the bullet. Christine Palilla was an outcast at school until 2 popular girls gave her a makeover. To say thank you, she shot both of them in the cooter before killing them. Within the walls of Alcatraz, Al Capone's mind completely melted to the point where he would throw his own feces at other inmates. He was paroled early simply because he was too much of a lost cause to be a threat. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium, so when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which caused horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. The ancient Romans would often substitute criminals into plays for punishment. So if a character died in the story, a real criminal would die on stage. The ancient Aztecs built swords out of obsidian, which is said to be 50 times sharper than surgical steel. These swords were apparently sharp enough to decapitate not only a human with one strike, but also a horse. Josephine Myrtle was born in 1868 with a rare genetic anomaly known as diphagus. Her body was completely normal down to the waist, but below it she had 2 pelvises and 4 legs. This is what toilets looked like in many medieval castles. There were a few cases of assassins climbing up these poop chutes and waiting for their targets to sit down before killing them. In 1977, the drummer for Lynyrd Skynyrd survived the plane crash that killed half the band. He then walked to a nearby house for help only to be shot by the homeowner. He apparently saw a bloody long-haired man and fired a warning shot that hit the drummer in the shoulder. Once Pyle shouted that there was a crash, the farmer helped him and he went on to fully recover. This is a comparison of a pug in 1880 versus what the breed looks like today. The pug was selectively bred to feature an extremely flat face, which has contributed to severe breathing difficulties as well as eye problems in many of these dogs. If a person dies on a plane during a flight, their body is typically moved to an empty first-class seat until the plane lands. After the Titanic disaster, the U.S. Congress passed a law requiring passenger vessels to carry more lifeboats. But the added weight made one ship called the SS Eastland too top-heavy. In 1915, the ship capsized before even leaving the dock, killing 844 people. Brian May is an astrophysicist who once collaborated with the team behind New Horizons, the first spacecraft to explore the planet Pluto. May is better known as the lead guitarist for the band Queen. If the Earth and all of its mass were a black hole, it would be the size of a ping pong ball. Only 3 people in the nation were qualified to handpack the parachutes for Apollo 15 in 1971. Their expertise was so vital that they were not allowed to ride in the same car together. A single auto accident could have crippled the entire space program. In 1859, a massive solar flare erupted on the sun. It blasted high-energy particles toward the Earth, creating brilliant auroras as far south as Hawaii. If a solar flare of that size erupted today, it would overload the entire power grid on Earth. In 1856, a woman died just after giving birth to a Greek monk named Mihailo Tolotos. The very next day, the baby was taken to a monastery on top of Mount Athos. He then spent his entire 82-year life completely isolated from women. He's the only known man in history to have lived and died without ever seeing a woman. While this may look like a regular city upon first glance, it's actually the world's largest cemetery. Located in Iraq, the Valley of Peace contains over 5 million bodies. Joseph Matheny was a serial killer from Baltimore who was active from the 1970s till the 1990s. Following his arrest, Joseph not only confessed to killing numerous men and women, he also claimed that he used their meat in the burgers that he sold out of his food truck. In 1941, Soviet archaeologists wanted to open up the tomb of Timur, aka Tamerlane. He was a Turco-Mongol conqueror from the 14th century who is often regarded as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. However, locals urged the Soviets not to do so since it was believed that opening the tomb would curse the world. This was mainly due to the inscription on his tomb which read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And inside his casket, there was another mysterious note that read, "Whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." But despite the warnings, Joseph Stalin ordered for Tamerlane's body to be exhumed. Just 3 days later, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. William Hitler despised his uncle Adolf and fled from Germany to fight for the US during World War II. William's sons also agreed to never have children in order to kill off Hitler's bloodline. During World War II, Michelangelo's statue of David was encased in bricks to prevent damage from bombs. On Christmas in 1914 during World War I, the British and Germans laid down their weapons. They crossed over no man's land and joined each other to celebrate the holiday. They exchanged food, played games, and even attended burials for each side. It was seen as a symbolic moment during the brutal war. In 2017, a billionaire from Brazil announced that he was gonna bury his Bentley for his afterlife. After receiving a lot of online hate for his wasteful decision, he revealed that it was simply a publicity stunt for organ donations. He said people bury things that are much more valuable than cars and nobody seems to care. Patty Mallet became pregnant at age 17 and was pressured by multiple people to abort the baby, but she refused. That baby was Justin Bieber. The Titanic fired 8 emergency flares before it sank. A ship in the area saw the flares and that the boat looked uneven in the water. But the captain didn't believe that the rockets were fired in distress, so he didn't take action. If he had, all of the Titanic's passengers could have been rescued, but instead help didn't arrive for more than 2 hours. In 1987, 17-year-old Daniel LaPlante killed a nursery school teacher and her 2 kids in Townsend, Massachusetts. But despite conducting a massive manhunt, authorities couldn't find him afterwards. Not long after, a girl who he previously dated opened her closet one night. She found David standing there with a machete, and he was wearing her mother's clothes with makeup smeared across his face. He then tied the family up, but the youngest sibling managed to escape and alert police. But once again, they couldn't find Daniel. 2 weeks later, the family had moved out, but they decided to drive past their home only to find Daniel standing in the window watching them. The police were called once again and Daniel was finally arrested in the home. Upon further inspection, it turned out that he had been living in their home the whole time that they were looking for him. The Scold's Bridle was a device that was used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be troublesome to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. This is a powerful photo of a starving Ugandan boy holding the hand of a missionary in 1980. For many years, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd told his bandmates that he wouldn't live to the age of 30. His dad reported that even when he was a child, Ronnie would often say, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old." When his father asked why he kept saying this, Ronnie would just reply, "Daddy, that's my limit." Sure enough, when he was 29 years old, Ronnie Van Zant died in a plane crash. During a World War II battle in the Pacific, American soldier Thomas Baker was badly wounded but refused to be evacuated. Instead, he ordered his squad to leave him propped up against a tree with nothing but a pistol and 8 bullets. Later, they returned to find Baker dead holding an empty pistol, with 8 dead Japanese soldiers lying around him. 65 years after it crash-landed on a beach in Wales, an American P-38 fighter plane emerged from the sand where it lay buried. After Colonel Robert Gould Shaw was killed in the Second Battle of Fort Wagner in 1863, he was buried in a mass grave as an insult for leading the first all-black regiment in American history. When troops tried to recover his body, his father proudly said, "We will not have his body removed from where it lies, surrounded by his brave and devoted soldiers." In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl from Minnesota was involved in a car accident in sub-zero temperatures. After the crash, her car wouldn't start, so she walked towards a friend's house who lived 2 miles away. When she was just 15 feet from her friend's front door, she collapsed. That night, temperatures dropped to negative 30 degrees Celsius, and no one was around to help her. 6 hours later, she was discovered frozen solid. She was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but her skin was too hard to even pierce with a needle. Amazingly, she was still alive, but her pulse was only measured at 12 beats per minute. Hoping for a miracle, doctors wrapped her in a heated blanket, and 2 hours later, she regained consciousness. After 49 days in the hospital, she completely recovered and suffered no permanent damage to any part of her body. In the original story of Peter Pan, Peter murders members of the Lost Boys when they grow too old. He did this because being an adult was against the rules in Neverland. In the middle of battles with pirates, Peter would also switch sides to kill members of the Lost Boys just for fun. Up until the 1800s, Turkish women who were accused of cheating on their husbands were tied up in a sack filled with cats, then thrown in the ocean. In 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was kidnapped while hitchhiking in California. She was locked in a box the size of a coffin under her kidnapper's bed for 7 years. She had to lie still and couldn't make any noise for 23 hours a day in pitch-black darkness. Her kidnapper was only caught when his wife finally reported him to police. In 1999, Richard Anthony Jones was convicted of a felony even though he had a strong alibi. He spent 17 years in prison until authorities found his doppelganger living in the same town with the same first name. This is a photo of mobsters hiding their faces from the media during Al Capone's trial in 1931. In 2014, a man from Queens, New York spent 5 months in prison, unaware that his bail was only $2. In the year 2000, 6-year-old Diedrich Owens brought a gun to school and shot and killed 6-year-old Kayla Rowland after she refused to kiss him. Because of his age, he couldn't be legally prosecuted, and he remains the youngest school shooter to date. Across the lagoon of Venice, Italy lies Poveglia Island, a lifeless place with a disturbing past. The island originally served as a quarantine station for 18th century travelers who might have the bubonic plague. But as the disease got worse and worse, it quickly became a death pit for plague victims. Over 150,000 people were thrown into graves or cremated on the island, as more than 50% of the island's soil is said to consist of human ash. But its history only gets darker from there. In the 1920s, authorities built a mental hospital on the island. Supposedly, the doctor in charge tortured his patients before going mad and throwing himself from the bell tower. Since 1968, the island has been abandoned and sealed off from public access. In case you might have missed them, these are some of the most morbid facts I've posted to date. This photo shows the dramatic differences between 2 boys who were exposed to the same smallpox source in 1901. One of them was vaccinated, the other was not. In 1985, a 13-year-old Colombian girl was trapped up to her waist in volcanic mud flow. Knowing she would die, volunteers and rescuers did their best to comfort her. She died after 60 hours, and her photo became iconic. A grieving mother in Florida decided to add a sandbox to the grave of her baby boy so that his older brother could play with him. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when 2 other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again.